Imagine it's the middle of the night. You're delivering food for a side job, and suddenly everything feels wrong. A repeat delivery to the same address, strange behavior from the customer, and a creepy voice telling you to hurry up, she's leaving. Now, you're not just worried about your tip, you're worried about your safety. It's moments like these that make you question every odd delivery you've ever taken. It was nearly 1 a.m. and I was out doing DoorDash deliveries in the dead of night. It had been a quiet shift with only a few orders here and there. After dropping off an order at a house not far from my location, everything seemed normal. The house was dark when I pulled up, so I left the food at the door, snapped a photo, and went on my way. Soon after, I got another order, this time from Taco Bell. When I checked the address, it was the same as the previous one. It struck me as odd, since repeat deliveries, especially back-to-back ones, didn't happen often, but I figured they were still hungry, so I accepted it. When I arrived, the house still seemed dark, and it looked more like a converted apartment complex than a traditional home with stairs on either side of the front. I'd already been here once, so I thought this would be easy. However, delivery instructions specified handing the order directly to the customer at the upstairs door, which immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Why would someone order food from two different places so late, especially when the restaurants were only 40 feet apart? Why would they request that I come upstairs instead of just answering the door downstairs? Despite my unease, I decided to proceed cautiously. I opted not to climb the stairs, but instead peered through one of the first floor windows. I could see a flickering TV and a candle burning on the table, but the place seemed empty, yet I could sense someone inside. I texted to let them know I'd arrived with the food, but no one came to answer the door or even check the phone on the table. The sense of urgency grew, and I felt like I should just leave. I set the food on the first level steps, quickly snapped the required delivery photo, and turned to head back to my car. That's when I heard a man's voice shout from inside, "Hurry up, she's leaving." A chill ran down my spine. I didn't stick around. I ran back to my car, locked the doors, and quickly reversed out of the driveway. As I maneuvered out, I glanced back toward the house. Two figures stood in the window, watching me. They were big, but it was too dark to make out any details. One of the downstairs doors was slightly ajar, which struck me as odd. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, like a setup involving someone on each floor of the building. I had a sinking feeling that if I had gone up those stairs, I would have been trapped, with someone coming from the lower level to follow me up. I called DoorDash support to report the incident, and thankfully, they took me seriously. They marked the location as unsafe in their system, and I vowed never to accept a delivery there, or even near it again. It had been my first week as a DoorDash driver in this new city, and I was still getting familiar with the area, but I'd encountered my share of odd deliveries. One afternoon, I was assigned a seemingly routine order, but the GPS led me deep into a rundown area. It looked like a half-demolished neighborhood with an abandoned, decrepit building that might have once been a hospital. The windows were shattered and ragged curtains fluttered in the wind. The instructions told me to deliver a single pizza to the back courtyard. I was already on edge, but I convinced myself there might be another building behind the hospital. After circling the block a few times, I finally found a narrow alley leading to a cracked, rusted gate. As I approached the courtyard, everything felt eerily quiet. The courtyard itself was overgrown with weeds and littered with trash. There was no sign of anyone, no cars, no movement. I checked the address again, and everything matched, but I hesitated as I moved forward, and then I froze. In the distance, I spotted 3 men standing behind pillars or bushes, facing away from me, but clearly waiting for something. They were watching the main entrance of the courtyard. I'd clearly entered from the back, unknowingly bypassing the main entrance. I had no idea what their intentions were, but I didn't want to find out. I backed away quietly, returned to my car and drove off as quickly as possible. I called DoorDash to report it and decided to call it a day after that. Now, as a more seasoned dasher, I've learned to recognize red flag orders, like small orders with huge tip offers that end up in sketchy, rundown areas. I avoid them now. I just hope other drivers are doing the same and staying safe. I had another unsettling experience when I was working at a local pizza place in a small town. One night, I had to make a delivery to a trailer park on the outskirts of town. The area was poorly lit and I struggled to find the right address. When I finally parked and checked the receipt, everything seemed correct, so I walked up to the trailer and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I called the customer, but he didn't pick up. I left a voicemail saying I was outside with his order and to come get it. After a final, louder knock, I went back to my car to double-check the address. Everything was in order, so I left the food outside and headed back to the restaurant. When I got back, I was told that the customer had called the store and was furious. He threatened the staff and even said he would murder any delivery driver who came to the trailer park again. It wasn't the first time he'd caused trouble, but it was the worst threat we'd received. A few days later, other drivers mentioned that this man had a reputation. He was an alcoholic with a history of schizophrenic episodes, and he was known to own guns. We were all on edge after that. No one felt safe delivering to that trailer park anymore, and eventually our store decided to stop servicing that address. The scariest part was that I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened if I had stayed at the trailer any longer. Maybe nothing, but then again, maybe something much worse. Not long after, I moved across the country, hoping to start fresh. I was 23 at the time, with everything in order for a new chapter of my life. I'd moved into a townhouse, and a friend of mine agreed to take over my lease. One evening, my friend and I were watching TV when there was a knock at the door. My friend opened it to find a bag of food from a sandwich place, but I hadn't ordered anything. The receipt had my name and address, but the phone number was unfamiliar. When I called the number, all I could hear was the sounds of a room and someone breathing. It was unsettling, but I convinced myself it was just a prank. Then, a few nights later, it happened again. This time, the delivery person claimed they'd taken the order directly over the phone from a man. The same number showed up on the receipt. The deliveries continued every few nights. I eventually called the number again, and this time someone on the other end quietly said she definitely still lives there, before abruptly hanging up. I knew something wasn't right, and I stopped calling the number after that. Over the following months, I began receiving repeated phone calls, sometimes 30 in a row, from the same number. My social media accounts were flooded with friend requests from people I didn't know, accompanied by bizarre messages like, "Don't you remember me from the party last night?" Even more disturbingly, someone started throwing eggs at the townhouse. I never figured out who was behind it, but I eventually moved away, blocking the number. The experience left me terrified and paranoid. Even to this day, I avoid answering unknown calls or unexpected knocks at the door. A few years later, after a divorce, I moved back to my hometown with my kids. I started working at a local boutique, and soon I realized the FedEx driver, Jeff, made the other girls uncomfortable. His conversations were increasingly strange. One day, he mentioned dropping off packages at my house. When I asked how he knew where I lived, he laughed and said, "It's not a big city." His comments became more invasive, including one offer to help me bring a big box into the house. That was when I realized he had either been watching my house or paying attention to the names on the mail. One day, I spotted his truck parked across the street from my house, and when I went outside to grab the packages, he stared at me from his truck with a grin on his face. After that, I called FedEx and reported him. A couple of days later, I learned he'd been fired for stalking multiple women. It turned my stomach. I had avoided him for months, but it was clear he had crossed the line, and I was relieved to know FedEx had taken action. If you've ever had a delivery that didn't feel right, or maybe even worse, something happened you couldn't explain, share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more real-life delivery driver experiences that'll keep you questioning who's really on the other side of the door. Stay safe out there.